Hi, I'm Rachel Myers. I'm from Google. I'm at Rachel Myers on the internet. I'm going to tell stories today about how we should deploy, about where we could decide to go with deployments, and I'm going to try to tell a few stories in here. So all my stories are things I've seen. I don't want to get anyone else in trouble. I will take the blame. So my stories come from ModCloth. ModCloth was an e-commerce company. I guess it still is an e-commerce company. We deployed once a week. One person did it. It was the work of 50 people that all went out at once. Then I worked at GitHub, where we had a deploy for every single PR that we merged, so I'll tell stories about that. I'll tell stories about starting a company called Observability that was deployment tooling. That was fascinating because I got to go see how many different companies were deploying. Our deploys were not surprisingly really boring compared to everyone else's. And I just started at Google recently, so I'm going to include one or two stories. I've just joined the rotation of people that do weekly deploys there, so I just have a few stories. Okay, so my talk is about how we should make deploys visible to other people on the teams. And I thought that I would start by talking about why maybe this would be a bad idea. Deploys are kind of terrible, so it seems maybe like this might be a bad idea, right? And I think a lot of our motivation, a lot of the reason we want to hold on tightly to deploys is because they're really difficult. We don't tend to do them very well, so we don't really want to invite a lot of people into this. So to start, I think that deploys are inherently dangerous. It's easy to break things. And production is always different than staging. So this is a good reason that we want to kind of hold on tightly to running deploys ourselves. Secondly, as a community, we haven't really standardized on tools or practices. So it makes it difficult for people to onboard. It's not like they can just go to deploy class and come back and know how to deploy, right? Everything is specific to each app. I once worked at a place where I had to deploy 3 different apps every week, and those each had 3 different processes. So it's kind of a mess. It's also a hard thing to learn to deploy if you only do it once every 2 months. If it rotates all the time, it's always someone else's job, then you learn how to do it that week, and then you lose your muscle memory. So that makes it hard. There's also a lot of anxiety around deploys, and I think, so engineers have one kind of anxiety, like the am I doing it right anxiety, but I think ultimately the larger anxiety is with stakeholders, because engineers can are in control. So if I mess it up, I can fix it. But stakeholders have all of the same anxiety without the control to fix anything. So I think one of the reasons we don't let other people deploy or let other people see the deploys is because we're just anxious that they won't know what they're doing. It's already scary. Don't do anything to fix it or to break it. I have a fun story here. This is a little too early to start with the stories, but this is a great story. I had been working on optimizations for our mobile site for about a month and a half, and I was deploying the changes. To be clear, by deploying the changes, I mean I had rolled out the changes to half of the fleet. It's out. It's in the world. It's live. And at that point, our VP of product walks over and sits down right next to me, which is disconcerting. It's so disconcerting. It was a big company, or big for me then. Now I work at Google, and I have a whole different standard. But at the time, the VP of product sat down right next to me and asked me to stop deploying to answer her questions about what was going out. And and on one hand, I was like, yes, I'm so excited that you care about my mobile optimizations, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. And then I walked away from that situation and was like, well, you probably should have known that a month ago, and you should have interrupted the deploy. But live and learn. The other thing that makes it hard to open up deploys to everybody is that we are not very good at making our deploys easier. There are ways to do this, but they take investment, and we don't really, as a community, agree that this is something that deserves our time. So that's why it remains the domain of DevOps. That's why we want to continue making only the most expert people do all the deploys, because something could go wrong. We're not making it any easier. And why should we invest to make this more visible? Some of the pain points around deploys are shared across the organization, or when they're not shared across the organization, should be. For example, we want all engineers to share in deploys because we think that that will convey concerns that they should take back into development. And I think something similar happens across the organization. Sometimes stakeholders just should feel nervous about these things, right? The primary reason that we should make deploys visible is because this is an important thing. This is where we're meeting our customers. This is how we are releasing features to help the customers. And if we have a business model, to make the money, right? So this is a very important thing. Who should care about this process? Everyone at the company should care about this process. This is how we are doing the thing that we're supposed to be doing as a company. So if I have succeeded in convincing you that this is a nice goal that we could attain, what would it take? Well, first, let's look at what our basis is. Like, where are we starting from? Some people deploy by SSHing onto their servers and running a git pull. No judgment. A lot of people deploy using git push Heroku master. That's fine. It's totally fine. Especially you standing in this building, it's perfectly fine. If you want to take control over your no downtime deploys, you might want something like Capistrano or Fabric. You might want Chef or Puppet. These will all let you semi-automate manipulating your load balancer. Okay, let's just talk about how that's all it's really doing. It's letting you manipulate your load balancer. That was my rant. Okay. Spinnaker is the Netflix tool that they use to run their deploys, and Cloud Foundry is their CD platform from Pivotal. Both Spinnaker and Cloud Foundry are enterprise-grade deployment products. They're both officially open source, which all of those words in one sense sound so great. I would just say both of them are such a pain to get running that it is very profitable to run hosted versions of both of these things. Sorry, that was some major shade. I'm sorry to anyone who's from Pivotal or Netflix here. I'm sorry. I know, I'm not wrong. Anyway. In the age of containerization and immutable infrastructure, lots of people are making homemade build servers. CI companies now almost always will offer you the option to build your containers for you. You just have to write your Docker file. And there's now an increasing number of dedicated continuous delivery companies that specialize in different types of deploys. They're almost all Docker-based. The point, and now there are a bunch of tools on top of Kubernetes, which is in a similar place where it's a very useful tool, but it is very complicated to get started. So the point that I want to make is that all of these are starting places. They're all perfectly fine. They're all starting places. And the place that we need to get to with our deploys is building on top of this, because these are all command line tools, with the exception of some of the CI/CD tools in Heroku. So what else could we do? Or what else do we have to do if that's what I'm calling the starting point? Okay, step one, we have to make our deploys safer. We all know that we should make our deploys safer, and yet look at where you are and how you're deploying. We're not really doing that. Step one to make our deploys safer, we need realistic pre-production environments. And this is really hard. It's really easy to put a bullet point up here that says, make a realistic pre-production environment, but it's actually really complicated. If you have a bunch of different services, then you need pre-production environments that mimic different aspects of every one of those things. I've worked at places where they had many pre-production environments that each approximated an aspect of production, which is really interesting. So if you want to test a background task, then you need to test it in the environment that actually runs your background task, because not all of them will do that. Okay, canary deploys. Canaries put the new code that you want to deploy in front of a small portion of your production traffic. And they're great because you can see spikes in latency or errors for actual traffic, but you're not going to bring your site down. Most people can still keep using your site. The time that you should leave your canaries out for is incredibly variable. Google, at the services that I deploy for, a canary stays out for a day. At GitHub, we left our canary. Would you like to guess how long we left our canary out for? That's cute. That's a joke about how we never release features. I got that. Okay. Okay, that was Emily. She said 5 minutes. Answer's 4 minutes, but she was cheating because she used to work there. Okay. The point is that you can have wide variation in how long you should leave your canary out. The point is to have a lightweight canary. Deploy what you understand. The person deploying should understand the changes that are going out, and that means preferring micro deploys instead of mono deploys. You probably have not heard of the phrase mono deploys. I've never heard it either. I'm trying to make it happen. We have microservices and monoliths. I think we also need micro deploys and mono deploys. If you have a better name, talk to me. The point is, if you have a deploy that's going out once a month and it has 100 people's work, it's like trying to land 50 jets all on the runway at the same time, and it's not surprising if things go wrong. And also there's no way that you could understand it. If you see something wrong, you probably are not the right person to diagnose the problem. The next way to make deploys safer is to write PRs in a safe way. Like, I should not have to have this bullet point. I shouldn't have to have this bullet point. Y'all just start doing this and we won't have to have this bullet point anymore. So what I mean is that if you have one feature, it might be safer to break that up into 10 different pull requests that go out over the course of 2 months instead of in one giant PR. Okay, and while we're on the subject of writing multiple PRs, we should always write our migrations and scripted changes first, and then the code that depends on those changes is second. If your migrations and your code changes are in the same deploy, your deploy is painful and probably going to go wrong, and sometimes impossible to roll back. So don't do that. Just don't do that. Stop doing that. Second step to making our code making our deploys more visible. We need to start letting non-engineers see what happens. So the first step to that is give everyone in the company access to the channels where you are deciding things, where you're doing things. That feels very scary to a lot of people, and I'm just going to assert that if they work for your company, you should trust them and you should give them access. The other thing that I've seen to be really great at this is chat ops. So at GitHub, we deployed via Hubot, and then we did this thing where we tried to evangelize it to the entire world, and everyone was like, that looks like a lot of work. We're not all like you. That's fine. But Hubot is just like a chat op. It's like a wrapper around Capistrano. Like, the internal guts of Hubot are not special. The thing that's special is an interface that everyone can see, and that's great. So to improve on that, we could do something that makes it even more available, something that Heroku does. Thanks for the empanadas, by the way. HeavyBit came out of Heroku, right? Am I just making all those jokes? Is that right? Okay. It's like floaty around Heroku. Is that okay? Okay. So Heroku and some of the CI/CD tools offer GUIs that let you click a button in order to deploy. This is great. This is super great. We need to do more of this, because it doesn't just ease the pain of deploying for the person who's deploying, but it lets anyone understand the state of the world when they want to find out. Like, say I get sick and I can't keep deploying, someone can rush up behind me and keep clicking buttons. It's wonderful. Okay, the other thing that makes this, that would make this okay is right now no one is allowed to ask about deploys because we hold it too close to our chest. So we need to culturally reinforce that people can ask you about this. So this is a thing that's acceptable. One thing that Hubot did that was great was gently mocking people who didn't follow the right process. And so some people would come watch just to see, right? It's kind of fun. Okay. Third thing that we need to do. We need to so y'all have been very polite up to this point. This might be the point where you riot. We need to let more people actually start deploying. So the first one that I think is product managers. Product managers own the release of the product. We need to let them do that. We need to let them do their job. So if we are the people who have engineering concerns about a product, they are the people who have business concerns about a product. Here's the thing that we could do so that we can both do our jobs. As the engineer, I can dark ship everything that goes out to customers. And by dark ship, I mean deploy 2 code paths that both run, and then we can measure the latency and error rates of the new code path, so I gain engineering confidence in it. And then it's in the hand of a product manager who has a UI that she can click to toggle or slide to scale up and down to make it available to customers. So 2-step deploy process. It goes out behind the scenes, hidden to everyone, and then the product manager makes it available to everybody. Y'all didn't riot. This will go well. Second, I think we need to let designers deploy design changes. This is my favorite audience ever. Okay. Let the record show for those who are watching that someone clapped when I said that. So I once deployed a new style guide, and I am kind of a Philistine, and I didn't notice that I had accidentally redeployed the old style guide again to everyone. This is why designers should get to deploy the design changes, because I am a Philistine and they will know if what they are deploying is correct. Something is also true for user research teams. Say you have an in-app survey, or for the marketing team, if you have marketing content that needs to be changed, let these people actually change it and deploy it. Honestly, if you have a good staging site, you should let marketing teams deploy whatever they want. They're probably smarter than you. That's all I'll say about that. You're being very nice to me, so I will not say more about that. Penultimately. One of the customers that we had at Observability was a logistics company. And their support team would talk to a customer on the phone, and then they had a YAML-like DSL that they would use to update customer settings. And then they used Observability to let everyone in the company deploy those changes. So they had a file for each customer that they could update, and then they would just deploy that. That's great. Think about all the things your support team could do if you let them deploy. Some of them would be good. Most of them would be good. Next, okay, sales secretly wants to deploy everything. I know you don't believe it, but I swear this is true. Think about all the CRMs they interact with. They don't like any of them. They need to be empowered to make fun little tools that will make their lives easier. So some examples of this are little little things that pop into chat ops that say this customer has been neglected for 5 days, or I've seen a lot of browser extensions from sales teams that will overlay whatever customer you're talking to with the yearly spend of that customer, which is kind of funny. It's like, do I have to care about this customer? Yes or no? But it's great. They want to do these things. So the best thing that you can do for your sales team is to create generalizable deploy scripts so they can deploy on your infrastructure, because they are making this stuff whether you let them or not. So if you let them deploy in a way that you trust, they will do that. And if you don't let them, they'll deploy it some other way. And the last thing is that if you have a data science team, it would be they love data. And if you make available hooks for them to put vertical lines where you had to deploy, they will absolutely do that. So I would say just make this data more available. Okay, takeaways. In case you haven't heard, I think that we should make our deploys safer. We should have good production environments. We should be running canaries. We should be ending mono deploys. And we should make sure that we have migrations and scripted changes that are backwards compatible. We should make deploys visible by giving access, using chat ops and GUIs, and shifting the culture to make it easier for everyone to look at deployments. And most controversially, I think we should have dark ships and feature flags galore. Combine those, your product managers will love you. Let teams just deploy specific parts of the app, or let them deploy the whole app. But if you feel weary about that, let them deploy specific parts. Make all of your data available. Okay, I'm Rachel Myers, and I brought feminist stickers for you all, and you can ask me questions.